what the title may tell us about this story.
The entire experience of doing this movie has been working with people who seem to have the fans and the audience's interests at heart. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful. And the title, obviously, you'll have to see the movie to sort of understand what it means. But the title, obviously, you'll have to see the movie to sort of understand what it means. But what are stories but mystery boxes? There's a fundamental question in TV. The first act is called the teaser. It's literally the teaser. It's the big question. So you're drawn into it. Then, of course, there's another question. And
where'd you get that?
A good question for another time.
I think The Rise of Skywalker, it doesn't answer anything. It's provocative, it asks questions, and it could mean a lot of different things. And I think that that's what was important to us. We didn't want to have a title that felt like it was telling you the story. At the same time, it needs to feel emotional. The Rise of Skywalker, it doesn't answer anything.
What was that? What was that? What was that? Wait. The Rise of Skywalker!
The Rise of Skywalker, it doesn't answer anything.
Oh, yes! They got the joke in this too? Yes! No, Joe!
The Rise of Skywalker, it doesn't answer anything. The Rise of Skywalker, it doesn't answer anything.
What orders from Mordor, my lord? What does the Eye command?
We have work to do.
I'm sure by now you've all seen the latest advertisement for the latest falsely marketed film for the latest installment of Disney's exploitative nostalgia-milking experiment, the Star Wars sequel trilogy. We have the teaser trailer for episode 9, and the title, and a whole bunch of retarded nonsense that makes absolutely no fucking sense. Raises a million questions, and in classic J.J. Abrams fashion will still be unanswered at the end of this 2.5-hour abortion. Because hey, who gives a shit if the movie makes sense or not, right? Just as long as it feeds you exactly what's necessary to get your gullible dick hard, I guess.
Well, I loved it. It was everything I hoped it would be.
Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens!
Basically, the movie, so good. Thank you, J.J. Abrams, for saving Star Wars.
But hey, at least it isn't the prequels, right? You know, 3 actual original movies with more practical effects than all of the other Star Wars movies combined, with original worlds, compelling villains, and a profound character arc that actually makes sense across all 3 movies. Done by the actual original creator who actually gave a fuck about his own product. Not to mention that Star Wars was his own intellectual property from his own intellect, which cannot be replicated no matter how much discount bullshit J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson, and the rest of Disney want you shallow, nostalgia-blinded OT fanboys to swallow. Yeah, who gives a shit about originality and the original creator's right to create, I guess?
George Lucas created Star Wars, and then he destroyed it. Let's be honest with the prequels. But Star Wars is back. It's back to its true form.
Now we have Discount Spielberg back to fix the final installment for this butt-fucked trilogy. And the trailer could not have pissed me off any more than it did. If you liked this trailer but didn't like The Last Jedi, do you have PTSD or fucking Alzheimer's? Do you not remember that almost all of the good shit in this trailer makes absolutely no fucking sense? Okay, well let's remedy that, shall we? So the trailer opens up with Rey panting in the desert. Right, now let's assume that there's been a time jump since The Last Jedi. Let's assume this takes place weeks, months, or even years after The Last Jedi. Hell, Luke at the end of The Last Jedi said the war is just beginning. Last I checked, it takes a while for a war to be won or lost. Yet for some reason, Rey is back on what we can assume to be Jakku, her homeworld, or Tatooine, Anakin's homeworld, to bait people's nostalgia. However, my guess would be that it's an entirely new planet that they've shoehorned into the trilogy to once again milk the nostalgia glands and elicit the same feelings as Return of the Jedi, likely so that they could write it into a book or stick it into a video game for marketing purposes. I'll come back to this. Let's get back to Rey. Why is she back in her Force Awakens clothes exactly? Last I checked, those clothes weren't Jedi attire. That is, of course, if you assume she's meant to be a Jedi. Not only that, but she's a part of the Resistance, correct? So why isn't she wearing Resistance clothes? Why isn't she dressed like she was in The Last Jedi? Why doesn't she have new attire to show that she's taken on the ways of the Jedi? I know it sounds like I'm contradicting myself because I just mocked Disney's shallow attempts at marketing and putting new things into their movies for no story purpose or importance, but it actually would make story sense to give her some new clothes. Because as I recall, she hated Jakku and wanted something more for herself, correct? So why would she go back to wearing those clothes? And why does she have the exact same hairstyle? She has gone through literally no development. This, I have no doubt, is JJ rubbing his nuts across the camera, maybe as a screw you to Rian Johnson. If that's the case, then bravo, but again, Rian threw logic out the window to achieve his retarded vision in The Last Jedi. I don't want JJ to do the same in Episode 9. That's not to say he didn't do it in Episode 7, but we're not talking about that, so let's move on. Now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about the planet. It's a barren desert that I will assume is an entirely new planet, right? The atmosphere is quiet, eerie, and slowly builds up to an event. Rey, for some reason, is breathing heavily, which, side note, why do all these teaser trailers start with someone breathing intensely, like someone rammed a dick up their ass? Moving on, we hear the echo of Luke Skywalker telling Rey that we've passed on all we know. 1,000 generations live in you now, but this is your fight. Then it fades to black to show text that reads, every generation has a legend. Now what can we take from this? At the very least, Mark Hamill is returning as Luke Skywalker as a Force ghost, unless he's just there to narrate the trailer, which given his past treatment by J.J. Abrams, wouldn't surprise me.
But I realized that wasn't really important to the story of Force Awakens. I still made it up myself. And, I tried to show it to J.J., and he, was accommodating, but basically patted me on the head, gave me a cookie, and made me go away.
He says that we passed on all we know. First of all, who is we? Luke was the only remaining Jedi, correct? Unless he's talking about Yoda and Obi-Wan. But what involvement did they have? And again, Rey in this shot and other shots of the trailer looks exactly the same. So the time that's passed must be very limited. You're telling me that Rey was trained in that time? Bullshit. Hell, they probably won't even mention training, since The Last Jedi already implied that she can lift mountains out of her asshole.
Training to become a Jedi is not an easy challenge.
Which again, makes no sense, and no sense that Luke implies that she was trained by multiple Jedis. 1,000 generations live in you now? Perhaps that implies that she read the Jedi text that she stole from Luke Skywalker? You're telling me that she self-taught her decades of ancient literature and Jedi techniques in the span of what looks to be a couple of years at the very most. Bullshit. The fucking Karate Kid tried to learn karate from a book.
Whoa, where are you going, sweetheart?
How about a front kick, Johnny?
And he proceeded to get his ass kicked. Luke then says, "This is your fight," implying that he and the other Jedi will have no involvement and that she's the last Jedi. So for all those hoping Luke bullshits his way back to life at the start of the movie, settle down and save your money. Though in all honesty, if they brought Luke back to life out of nowhere, that could honestly do more harm than good. And this is coming from someone who despises The Last Jedi. If Luke comes back, that will solidify that Star Wars is a joke, once and for all. Being that the only consistency this series has left is that the dead do not come back to life. Foreshadowing! We see an approaching TIE interceptor that tries to run Rey down. For some reason, Rey ignites Anakin's lightsaber. No, I will not call it Rey's lightsaber, it's Anakin's. And then she turns around to pose for the camera, and then she tries to outrun the TIE fighter, and when she almost gets flattened, she does a Force backflip to launch herself above it before the trailer fades to black. Okay, first off, how did she fix the broken lightsaber without training? Not to mention, didn't the kyber crystal inside shatter as well? And don't tell me that she learned it from a book, okay? Luke was the last Jedi and the only one who knew how to construct or repair a lightsaber. They just gotta have the same lightsaber involved in these movies no matter what. That thing has probably the strongest plot armor in the entire franchise. By all accounts, it should never have been seen again after The Empire Strikes Back. But now it gets resurrected when it's broken beyond repair. And now we get to that bit that made me laugh my ass off. The bit that I'm sure is Kathleen Kennedy wiping her cunt all over the screen to say, "I'm still here, you sexist pigs." Why does Rey turn around and pose to run away from the TIE Interceptor? Why doesn't she just run away instead of posing like a Super Smash Bros. Character titled Strong Female Protagonist?
Choose your character.
Why doesn't she just run, and furthermore, why does she try and outrun the TIE Interceptor? I mean, running away I get, but why would you try to outrun it when it's impossible? Why not try and run around it or zigzag or whatever, something intelligent? The purpose of this is seriously one of the most retarded things I've ever seen in a Star Wars movie, and I'm talking Johnson levels here. Just before the spacecraft runs her down, Rey somehow has the fucking power and the skill to force jump, backflip, perfectly timed right over it. At best, she's a Jedi apprentice, by all rights and all stretches of logic. She has the power to pull off a stunt like that, yes. She's powerful with the Force, but she's not Obi-Wan Kenobi or Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, both who've had a decade of training before pulling off stunts like that on screen. The closest was Luke, and he was indeed a prodigy, as is Rey, but he never did anything close to that extreme or powerful on screen. It would have been impossible for Disney to ignore the very relevant criticism of Rey being a Mary Sue. And in the opening shot of the trailer, it's like Kathleen Kennedy and the rest of the modern day Lucasfilm scum are telling us to go fuck ourselves, by implying that Rey received training that she never had and is now pulling off stunts more daring and greater than any Jedi in history. After seeing this, any investment I had in the trailer, which was very slim to begin with, I took with me on a toilet break and proceeded to wipe my ass with it. So let's talk about the pilot of the TIE Interceptor for a moment. We are led to believe it's Kylo Ren, as it showed black gloves akin to what he has been seen wearing in the past. The TIE Interceptor is also something we've seen him use in The Last Jedi, which was very reminiscent of Vader in the OT. However, I'm almost convinced that this entire sequence takes place in a dream, as part of Rey's meditation or Jedi training from Luke. This is honestly what I'd like to believe. The only way I can see this ridiculousness making any tangible sense. When you look around, it's only Rey in the middle of the desert. There's no evidence of her getting there by traditional means, no crashed spaceship or footprint trail. She's just there. There's no climactic feeling or sense of finality, so if it's an encounter with Kylo Ren, I'm almost positive it's not a real sequence. Or perhaps it's the Force connection between the two of them in The Last Jedi, which I still call bullshit on as an actual Force power. If it ain't OG, it ain't canon, boys and girls. Anyway, let's pretend it's not Kylo or Vader for a moment. Let's pretend it's Poe, and he's giving Rey a lift out of the desert in the TIE Interceptor that he stole. I'm bringing up this scenario because the manner of which she jumps over it almost looks like she's trying to grab hold of it instead of slicing it with the saber. But that would be even more ridiculous because even if Rey managed to grab hold of it, it would tear her arm off, or the atmosphere would tear her apart at that velocity. But hey, there's now a precedent for ludicrous physics in Star Wars in the past, so I guess that we can call that consistent. That is to say, consistently shit.
Let's recap this shit! Princess Leia gets blown the fuck up and now has the ability to float through outer fucking space to her safety! What the fuck was that shit?!
Anyway, we move on to a range of other shots. Taking us to new worlds, we see a mysterious ship approaching some high mountains. Then it cuts to Kylo Ren in what's probably my favourite shot of the whole trailer, which takes place in a barren forest and looks to be burning from a battle taking place. Stormtroopers are in the background and they seem to be aiming competently. Maybe they'll actually hit their targets in this film. The atmosphere within this shot is crimson red and in all honesty looks gorgeous. Kylo Ren is still maskless from The Last Jedi and proceeds to kill a resistance soldier. Although the kill looks very weird. He uses the hilt of his weapon to stab him and tackle him to the ground. Almost as if JJ, who came up with the saber design, wanted to show its use in effect and make it flashy for the audience. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we saw that in The Force Awakens when Kylo fights Finn. In this shot, its use feels really tacked on because Kylo uses it impractically. It's one soldier and he can easily kill him from a distance with the saber, but if you'll watch Robot Head's video on lightsabers, you'll know the reason why he doesn't do this.
I'd been on board for most of this movie, but the first real sign I had that this was a Disney movie was this. Oh, sorry, that's not really how it went. It was more like this. A lightsaber just went straight up the middle of his body and...
'Tis but a scratch
A scratch?
We have seen limbs flying off since 1977, but now you can be hit with one, somehow knocked out, and not be split in two. They actually filmed a scene where Poe had sewn up his jacket. That was the damage that was done.
The reason is Disney doesn't like to dismember limbs on screen, so the sabers will just defy logic or be used as impractically as possible to avoid this. Then the immediate next shot contradicts maskless Kylo in this scene by showing that he has fully rebuilt his mask entirely. I actually believe this was a good decision that falls in line with Kylo's character. He killed Snoke, who wanted the mask gone, and Snoke was the one who made Kylo feel poor for wearing it. But he himself always preferred it as a means of intimidation, not to mention adhere to the practices of his grandfather, which he idolized. But speaking plainly, the actual reason why, it looks like JJ included it in this shot, specifically in the trailer, as symbolism for repairing the damage done to both the character of Kylo Ren and the saga. Much like returning Rey to her original attire, it was Rian Johnson's decision, remember, to remove the mask. He made the decision to get rid of it, despite it being more practical than ever for Kylo to wear the mask after his face was damaged by Rey in The Force Awakens. So again, it's a middle finger to Rian Johnson, and I'm on board with that, but unlike Rey's attire, I believe this actually makes narrative sense. It then fades to Poe and Finn, who look like they're in the same desert landscape as Rey based on the aesthetic. I could be wrong, but there are later shots that confirm this. This is another shot that I like because Finn and Poe were set up to be good friends in The Force Awakens. Both actors had great chemistry on screen, and the character of Poe, while there wasn't much to him in The Force Awakens, he had a charm to him, thanks to Oscar Isaac's likeable demeanor. We expected more between these two characters in The Last Jedi, but that dynamic was shoved aside for other characters. So seeing them back together on an adventure together, without some meddlesome bullshit to get in the way, is encouraging for us as the audience to observe. I was actually looking forward to their lethal weapon buddy cop dynamic that we caught glimpses of in The Force Awakens. Placing them back together is again JJ reinforcing his vision back into the trilogy, after certain complications.
Saving what we love.
Ugh. The next shot is BB-8, who has the same design, no red arms, I'm glad to see, and another droid who I'm sure will be equally as useless as the Porgs. Gotta get those marketing shots in, eh, Disney? Which brings me to the return of Billy D. Williams as Lando. Well, I hope you haven't pre-ordered your tickets yet, boys and girls. Remember the last time JJ teased an icon's involvement in a Star Wars movie? Yes, we got Han Solo, or a shallow version of him, but we were also teased Han and Leia together once again. But we got collectively less than 3 minutes of screen time between the two of them. And then you all know what happened next. Lando is literally all they have left from the OT. Look, I like Billy D. Williams as Lando. He's a character I do enjoy, certainly not one I was clamoring to see again. And certainly not one that would influence if I will buy a ticket or not if I wasn't making YouTube videos. But I have no hope that they will do him justice. Hell, he looks the part. I look at this and Lando Calrissian just leaps off the screen. Not to mention how happy he looks to be back inside his lady love. Oh yeah, that's right. Solo happened. This shot is now ruined. Fuck you, Kathleen. Does anyone actually believe they are going to do Lando justice? Disney likes to poke the nostalgia gland to get you into the theater. Hell, they wouldn't shut up about the original cast coming back for The Force Awakens. And the first opening letters of the crawl were Luke Skywalker has vanished, which may as well have said, no refunds, suckers. I predict Lando's role will be similar to Chewbacca's in The Last Jedi. A glorified dad who takes his kids to school and then waits patiently till he gets the call to come pick them up. Speaking of which, Lando makes no more appearances in this entire trailer. You get the repeat shot of both him and Chewbacca in the Falcon from the original trilogy, and that's it, meaning he likely won't participate in ground combat, and this just reinforces my prediction. Speaking of the OT, the next shot cuts to a desert chase sequence with Finn and Poe alongside C-3PO, being chased on desert carts by blaster shots. Remind you of anything?
Let's go, and don't forget the droids. Run away.
Oh, JJ, for fuck's sake. Well, at least I can say this is the last poach from the original trilogy in this trailer, right? Right. Anyway, we get a glimpse of a crashing ship, which I'll assume is how Finn, Poe, and Rey ended up on the desert planet to begin with. Then it cuts to Rey holding a medal, which is a reference to the original Star Wars, and the medal ceremony where Luke and Han get their rebellion medals. From what I can tell, it's the same medal, which I'll admit is a nice nod to the original Star Wars. I'd like to think that it was Han Solo's medal, or maybe it was Lando's medal that we never got to see from Return of the Jedi. And then, just because it didn't piss you off enough the first time, it cuts to Carrie Fisher as Leia hugging Rey in a shot-for-shot remake of The Force Awakens. J.J. Abrams again brushing his balls against our computer screens. Alright, we get it, J.J., you're back in charge. We're all happy for you. Fuck. And again, Leia hardly knows Rey, so why would she be hugging her? You must have known this would piss people off even more. Are you all tone deaf over at Lucasfilm? Very few people like Rey, and we all love Leia. Show us something that makes Rey likable. You can have them hugging all day. Without a reason to like Rey, this whole stunt, shall we call it, falls completely flat. Anyway, as that shot closes, Luke's voice once again echoes, saying that we will always be with you. I don't really mind this line, but again, who is we exactly? I think it will be more endearing if Luke says, I will always be with you, as it shows a more one-on-one master-student personal relationship with Rey. Then it cuts to all our heroes, shall we call them, walking towards the edge of a cliff. They include Finn, Poe, and Rey, C-3PO for some reason, which I'm not really against, it's just strange that he's there is all. Fucking BB-8 and his son BB-4, and thankfully, Chewbacca, holding his bowcaster. Another subtle screw you to Rian Johnson, I believe. And this is the last part of the trailer that I actually liked. Because next comes the ultimate deal breaker. Because below the cliff they are facing is an ocean harboring the still much intact debris of the fucking Death Star. God damn it, JJ! What is with you and shoehorning in Death Stars into your fucking Star Wars movies? First you were creating your own Death Star, now you're actually digging up their fucking corpses. Look, the shot itself is cool, but this makes very little sense. I'm not opposed to the Death Star ending up on a random planet after the explosion, of which I'm going to assume was the Return of the Jedi Death Star, okay? However, in both Return of the Jedi and Star Wars A New Hope, both explosions completely vaporized all traces of the space station. This is just more shoehorned retcon bullshit to get people into the seats. I have no idea why the characters are there, nor do I really care. But fuck off, you can't even leave the bones of the original trilogy alone, or come up with something even vaguely original. Luke then says, no one's ever really gone, which was literally replayed from his conversation with Leia from The Last Jedi, implying Force Ghost involvement perhaps? Also, I find it hilarious that the only decent moment from The Last Jedi is the part that JJ decided to reference. And then the trailer is over, right? Until motherfucking Palpatine's laugh echoes through the black screen. What the fuck? What the actual fucking shit are you doing, Disney? As if you hadn't retconned enough, now you're going to render the entire original trilogy and the prequels pointless. You're bringing the fucking Emperor back, who should by all rights be dead, and was dead after being thrown down a shaft, vaporized, and then blown up with the Death Star. What? Are you just praying people will be dumb enough to fucking eat this shit up without a second thought? That people are just so nostalgia desperate and pathetic they're gonna allow you to bring Emperors and Jedis back to life like it's fucking Dragon Ball Z? Palpatine was the one thing left that gave the previous films any weight. You had Snoke, and you left him in the hands of a retard. So you're just gonna shoehorn the Emperor as the bad guy, hand him to Rey on a silver platter, and just have her save the universe all over again, effectively making Luke's triumph in Return of the Jedi and the emotional payoff completely worthless if you do? If you fucking do this, mark my words, JJ, Kathleen, Ryan, and anyone else at Lucasfilm listening to this, the fan outrage will go from World War III to fucking nuclear. Your pockets, your jobs, and your fucking honorary Oscars, kiss it all goodbye. To me, Star Wars was already over with Return of the Jedi, but this is just pissing on its corpse. Yes, I know Palpatine might not come back to life, but given JJ, Ryan, Kathleen, and Bob Iger's disrespect for the fans and the Star Wars lore, I wouldn't put it past them. You have this team of collective retards in charge of the most important and impactful franchise to Western culture, spanning generations, grandfathers, fathers, sons, daughters, mothers, grandsons, granddaughters, nieces, and nephews. To treat something of this magnitude with such disrespect is disgusting, and I can only hope that people who are still ignorant enough to still support you wake up and see the light soon enough. Anyway, to close this video, the title itself reveals itself to be The Rise of Skywalker, which in all honesty should have been the title for episode 7 or 8, since it's actually not that bad, but now it just makes no tangible sense.
I think The Rise of Skywalker, it doesn't answer anything. It's provocative, it asks questions, and it could mean a lot of different things. And I think that that's what was important to us. We didn't want to have a title that felt like it was telling you the story.
Oh, so the title actually has no meaning. It's just there to provoke thought and have you ask questions. You know what that sounds like? There's no actual meaning for it whatsoever. They just want to get you in the seat under the pretense of the word Skywalker alone, and then once they have your money, they'll give you the big screw you. Like I've been trying to say for this whole video, this whole trailer, this entire movie is a trap. It's a trap designed to exploit you at every turn. Luke Skywalker is dead. Bringing him back at this point will do more harm than good. I don't care if they save it for the end of the movie. It will completely fuck whatever consistency Star Wars has left. If Kylo Ren turns to the light side, he is a Solo or an Organa, not a Skywalker. And there is no way, absolutely no way, they can take Rey's already fucked origins from The Force Awakens, coupled with the buttfuckery of The Last Jedi, and turn her into a Skywalker in any way, shape, or form that makes believable sense. Not to mention the title is contradictive. It previously states the saga is going to come to an end, right? Not to mention Kathleen Kennedy went on to record saying that this is the last episode of the Skywalker saga. Episode 9 is titled The Rise of Skywalker. Well, sorry Disney, but it's a little late.